Good morning, Europe. It's Friday, the 22nd of April. Thanks for joining us. These are your top stories.
Russia rejects Ukraine's offer to establish an Easter truce, and Zelenskyy calls for international aid of €6.5 billion a month to keep the country's economy alive. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson heads to India to negotiate a post-Brexit trade deal, just as MPs give the go-ahead for an inquiry into whether he misled Parliament over the Partygate scandal. And the number of Serbians in favour of joining the EU is lower than those against. This, as the European Parliament says it regrets Serbia not following EU sanctions on Russia.
There's no respite for Mariupol. After almost 2 months of invasion, Russia claims that the entire territory is under their control. Moscow has released this video claiming that the entire territory has been conquered, but it is impossible to verify where it was filmed. But the US insists that Ukrainian forces still control Azovstal. Meanwhile, President Zelenskyy reported in his nightly address that the Kremlin has not agreed to his proposal of a ceasefire in the east of the country.
Unfortunately, Russia rejected the offer to establish an Easter truce. This very well demonstrates how the leaders of this state actually relate to the Christian faith, to one of the most joyful and important holidays. But we hope for peace, hope that life will conquer death.
On Thursday, Zelenskyy also called for international aid, asking for €6 billion a month to keep the country's economy alive. In the east, Russian advances are progressing. Kyiv has confirmed that dozens of localities in the east have fallen. On the northern front, Kharkiv continues to suffer from Russian artillery shelling. At least 2 people were killed and 5 wounded after several shelling in the eastern part of the city.
Ukraine has confirmed that Russia controls most of the strategic port city of Mariupol, but Ukrainian forces remain there. Earlier, the Russian president ordered his troops not to risk more losses by storming the besieged city. Putin instead called for Russian troops to blockade the Azovstal steelworks. The mayor of Mariupol scoffed at the idea that a Russian victory was already achieved.
The city was, is and remains Ukrainian today, because today our brave warriors, our heroes, are defending our city as much as possible. So it doesn't matter what statements are made there, the city is and will be Ukrainian.
Mariupol has been a key objective for Russia since the start of the invasion. Capturing the city would allow Moscow to establish a land corridor to Ukraine's Crimean Peninsula that Russia annexed in 2014 and deprive Ukraine of a major port and prized industrial assets.
The operation continues according to plan. Mariupol, which has become a hub of nationalist formations, has been liberated. There was and still is an opportunity for Ukrainian troops to lay down their arms and come out via established corridors.
Meanwhile, 3 school buses filled with evacuees from Mariupol arrived in Zaporizhzhia after crossing through territory held by Russian forces. Women and children finally arrived after attempts to open a humanitarian corridor from Mariupol had been delayed multiple times.
Russia has added 29 US citizens to its blacklist of sanctioned people. The group of politicians, businessmen and journalists are now banned from entering Russia. It includes the US Vice President Kamala Harris, Pentagon spokesperson John Kirby, Meta founder Mark Zuckerberg, as well as the chief executives of Bank of America and LinkedIn. But that is not the story on the front pages in Russia. Most of the pro-Kremlin press is focusing on the meeting between President Putin and Russia's defense minister, where Putin congratulated the army for its successful operation to capture Mariupol. However, the US State Department says Ukrainian forces are still holding ground in the city and calls Russia's claims disinformation. Galina Polonskaya, Euronews from Paris.
Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez condemned the atrocities allegedly committed by Russian forces in the town of Borodinaca outside Kyiv during a visit to Ukraine with his Danish counterpart. Sanchez and Mette Frederiksen arrived in Kyiv earlier on Thursday for talks with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. Both premiers promised him military support.
It's clear that one of the most important messages from Denmark today is that we expect to deliver even more weapons to Ukraine, because that's what's needed most.
A ship of the Spanish Navy, the Isabel, sailed off today from a Spanish port bound for Poland, loaded with 200 tons of modern ammunition and other material. The ship carries 30 trucks, several special heavy transport vehicles, and 10 smaller vehicles loaded with the military material that will be transferred to Ukraine.
Meanwhile, US President Joe Biden made his own donation of multi-million euros worth of weapons and ammunition to Ukraine in the coming days.
Today, I'm announcing another $800 million to further augment Ukraine's ability to fight in the east, in the Donbass region. This package includes heavy artillery weapons, dozens of howitzers, and 144,000 rounds of ammunition to go with those howitzers. It also includes more tactical drones.
Despite calls for help, hundreds of tanks remain stored up in Flensburg in Germany. Chancellor Scholz is facing more and more criticism for hesitating amid pressure to deliver heavy armour to Ukraine, just like other NATO members have already done.
Boris Johnson is away from the heat of Partygate in Westminster today. Instead, he's in the heat of New Delhi, meeting his Indian counterpart Narendra Modi, eager to advance a post-Brexit trade deal with the world's sixth largest and fastest growing major economy. To put into context just how keen, well, this visit was delayed from last year because then India was the epicenter of the Delta variant of COVID. At the time, Johnson was accused of delaying a ban on travellers from India in case any offence would scupper a trade deal. Well, now he says he believes a trade deal can be done by the autumn. But will Johnson risk offending Modi today by raising India's failure to condemn Russia over its invasion of Ukraine? And as trade experts point out, a deal with India would be a significant prize, but extremely difficult to achieve. It has a reputation as one of the most protectionist economies in the world. And although Johnson is 6,000 kilometres from London, domestic political issues follow him. The British journalists with him keep asking whether he'll resign over those parties he attended in his Downing Street home and office while ordinary Britons were staying apart because of COVID. Parliament yesterday decided to investigate whether he lied to MPs when he repeatedly insisted that no rules were broken, and more of Johnson's Conservative MPs called on him to quit. Even if his trade mission achieves little, sometimes it's nice just to get away. Ty Genwright, Euronews in London.
The 59th edition of the Venice Biennale, one of the most prestigious art events in the world, will begin on April 23rd. 89 pavilions representing different countries are showcased in the so-called Olympics of the art world. Aside from the national pavilions, a large central exhibition is organized by an invited curator. This year, Cecilia Alemani, the first female Italian curator, decided to bring women, non-binary and trans artists to the center of the conversation.
In the last 125 years, in 57 editions, there has been a great preponderance of male artists, so I wanted to fix it a little bit.
Quindi ho voluto un po' riaggiustare la storia.
Of the 213 artists in Alemani's exhibition, most of them for the first time in the Biennale's history are women, a choice which, according to its curator, is a deliberate move away from male dominance in the world of art and culture. Visitors can see the exhibited works until November 27th.
This is Good Morning Europe. We'll have plenty more after the break.